stop on our way to Monterey for Monterey Car Week. We have a few hundred miles in. We have 959 miles to go. You know, the Lamborghini Huracan is a great road trip car. This thing has everything a guy would need. My favorite part about this car are the cup holders. They're factory add-on you've got to get, but let me tell you, these things, you can move them around. They fit any size cup, and they work really, really well. I grossly underestimated the fuel consumption. I was using the little digital thing that tells me how many miles we have left, and it just asked if it needs to help us find a gas station, because I desperately need fuel. I have no idea how far away Reno is from us, so my plan is to just gather a bunch of speed, and when we run out of gas, I'm going to try to coast us right into Reno, right into the gas station, so stay tuned. Coasting right into the Flying J. I think we're gonna make it. We have dashes. Our fuel gauge is totally empty, and we're pulling into the Oasis. We're fueling up, and we just hit exactly 1,000 miles. All right, well, we made it to Ficarra's. We are here. We decided the car needs a wash. Just doing a quick wash. We just got all our stuff inside, and yeah, we'll be back to show you guys around the shop. Hey guys, Trevin here, Gear Shift Garage. I'm here with John Ficarra, Ficarra Classic, and we're gonna do a shop tour.
Welcome to the shop, Trevin.
Welcome to the shop, thank you.
Welcome everybody to my shop. I'm here in Northern California, and we do all kinds of crazy work on crazy cars. You can check out my channel at Ficarra Classic to see the wacky projects we got going on. But let's walk around the garage, and I'll give you a quick tour of the highlights of the insanity that's going on. We can start with this.
Okay.
All right.
What are we doing with this?
What is this? This is a 1979 Porsche 928. I have 4 of them, and they all came in a very strange way. I had one that I really was going to restore and make it my own, and I kept getting parts cars offered to me. This was a parts car. We were going to disassemble it. It's a Euro car, which means it has a little bit more horsepower and things that the other cars did, but it's an automatic. Nobody wants automatic 928s. They're not terribly expensive, and I'm not thrilled about it either. So it ran so well. Every time we moved it, it ran better than any of the other cars, and I'm like, we can't scrap this. So we decided to turn it into an art car, and the paint job is reminiscent of the 1970 Porsche 917 that ran at Le Mans. It's called the Hippie paint job, and we had Christopher Michaels of VinWiki and Matchbox, or is it Matchbox or Hot Wheels?
Hot Wheels.
Hot Wheels fame.
Christopher Michaels art, check him out.
Yeah, check out Christopher Michaels art. And he did hand-painted this paint job for us. And then we were like, once the paint job was done, I'm like, let's go even farther. Let's turn it into a safari. And we've done it with all the spare parts left around the shop. And it's been a blast kind of building it. PRG Products builds suspensions for kind of trophy trucks. They're local here in Nevada City. And they put together a 2-inch lift kit for us. Just made it from scratch in a morning. They were like, "Yeah, I can do that. Easy." So 2-inch lift. We got a little roll cage we put through in the back. We got the traction boards and stuff. The rack is left over from our 6-wheeled Range Rover project. We just put that together, which I'll show you that truck in a few.
Isn't this the end pieces?
It's the 2 ends. We had to buy 2 racks to make a rack for the 6-wheeler, which you'll see why. It's huge. So the 2 ends of it, we just put together and made a roof rack. These are Yakima racks off a car I owned 30 years ago.
Because you never throw anything away.
I never throw anything away. There's a reason for that. We built this car out of spare parts. Hand painted the wheels, these are called phone dial wheels, which are my favorite 928 wheels. Put some bigger tires on it, tire for the roof. It just turned out fun, and it runs fantastic. So we're going to take this now to Monterey, to the Porsche Works reunion, and then we're going to take it to the Concours de Lemons in Monterey and show it off. It's already been to Radwood in Northern California, where it won an award, and people seem to love it. And I built it to kind of get rid of it. Now I'm kind of getting attached to it. We'll see if I sell it or not. But it's been a lot of fun. It's a fantastic car. It actually handles really well off-road, so we're excited about finishing this project and seeing what we can do with it. And so yeah, that's this. And then we do work on all kinds of cars for private clients. We only do like 1 or 2 cars at a time. Obviously, since the shop isn't too big. Right now, we've got a '88 911 Carrera here, which we're getting the air conditioning working because it's been a million degrees in California this summer, and the owner was like, it hasn't worked in 15 years. So we've got that fixed. That's going out tomorrow. But they're fun little cars. It's a low mileage car, local car. It's nice. But we've done Kellisons, we've done Jaguar D-types here. We've done all kinds of crazy cars.
Is there anything you don't like to work on?
I don't like to work on boring cars. So if somebody wants to bring in whatever, like, something that's Joe ordinary, not terribly interested in it. It's weird, or it's a challenge, or nobody's been able to do, like, they haven't, like, we took it to somebody else and they couldn't figure it out. Oh, I'll figure it out. I like puzzles and I like challenges. So, like, we did the Kellison, which essentially was a kit car from back in the day. We made it so nice for the client that it was accepted at the Quail in Monterey. It was on the lawn last year. It was to have a kit car end up on the lawn was a huge deal.
Right.
That turned out beautiful. But we had to hand make drip rails for that. No one ever made that stuff before. It was a lot of fun. So I love challenging stuff. We do a lot of Porsches because people know me for Porsche. But we do all kinds of things. We're probably going to do like a 63 Fuelie split window Vet next. I got one of those coming in. That's been sitting for like 20 years. That sounds like fun. So I don't, it's not European or American. It's just something that's intriguing and makes good content for my channel. Like working on, a Chevette isn't going to do too much unless it's like two Chevettes put together with a turbine motor in it. We'll beep that out. So,
and then what is this monstrosity?
Well, you know what this monstrosity is because you're partially responsible for this. This is the Rocky Aoki twin Targa 911 that he ran in the One Lap of America in 1991, and he had a custom made for him.
So tell us what the One Lap of America is for those that don't know.
I will do that for you. So the One Lap of America was what happened after the Cannonball Run. Brock Yates wanted to continue doing big events, but he didn't want people dying. So the One Lap of America was originally literally driving around America. He would drive his car to the 4 points at the 4 corners of the U.S., and you had to come as close as you could to his time. Won the run. Nowadays, you run whatever you want. They have different classes, and you go start at the tire rack in Indiana, and you go to different tracks around the United States for like a week or so, and you come back there and do skid pads, and it's a really fun event. I did it in 2010. But back when Rocky was doing it, it was still, cowboy wild time. People were showing up with weird stuff like this. Nowadays, people are doing it in GT2s and GTRs and stuff like that. But Rocky Aoki was the founder of Benihana, and he was a serial entrepreneur. He was a ballooning champion. He has the world record for the longest ballooning trip from Japan to California, which crashed and almost killed him. He was an offshore boat racer back when they were doing the drugs and back like Miami Vice days, and crashed those. Almost killed himself in doing that. He decided he liked was it backgammon? It was backgammon, I think. He taught himself, and in 4 years he was world champion at that.
I think he was a pro wrestler too, or something.
He was a wrestler. He's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, and you look him up, and he did everything. He's a real symbol of the excesses of the '80s. He's actually in Wolf of Wall Street. His character's in there because he was part of the whole debacle at the end that brought him down. Rocky got busted for some insider trading and things at the end. He ended up going to jail for a little bit. But so he ended up doing One Lap of America in a variety of cars. One was, he originally did it in a Rolls-Royce Wraith, and he did it with a microwave in it and a chauffeur because he was trying to sell Benihana microwave meals. So they're cooking and handing him out of the track, and and they raced they were racing around the country.
That's awesome.
And then he got into limousines, and he did like a Cadillac. He had a Corvette, C3 Corvette limo. He had a Volkswagen Bug limo. But this is really, I think, the most excessive one he ever built. And it's a 1973 911 Targa. They cut in half and built this center section from scratch. And it's one car. We thought it was like two cars put together, but it was one car. And then they put this 959 body kit on it. The look of it was just insane back in the day. And then it had like a white interior with the turquoise and pink 80s interior. And he had a bed over there that he would sleep in, and a whole bar and probably a whole lot of cocaine. And everybody I've talked to from 91 said it was insanely slow, but everybody just fell in love with it.
Cool, yeah.
So what happened was he had it for years. He took it to a body shop in LA, and he said, they were going to get it back up in condition, I guess. He passed away in 2008. A couple months before he passed, he sold it to an artist named Baron Margot down in Los Angeles. And Baron bought it for who knows what reason in this condition. This is essentially what it looked like. It was gutted. It did have the engine in at the time, but otherwise it was ready, like body shop ready is how they found it. He bought it for like $9,000 from the body shop, or so he said. And he kept it for years. And then it popped up 8 years ago on Craigslist, and it would pop up every 6 months. It would pop up and go for sale.
Like in the $30,000 range, right?
30. I think originally it was like 45 grand and 35 grand for a long time. And people were like, you're insane. And then what happened was he sent the engine out to be worked on, and the guy who went to work on it just rabbited out and disappeared and stole the motor. So the motor's missing. But it was kind of a legend of the internet for decades. And the Facebook finally got on Facebook Marketplace, and people started sending this to me because I'm known for knowing about 959s. I worked at a place called Canapa, which does work on them, and I've researched them for years. So they're like, it's a 4-door 959, or people didn't know what it was. Every 6 months, I would get a couple flurries of emails, and so I knew about it, but the price was insane, and I didn't do anything about it. So this guy and I cannonballed last year in a Rolls Royce, and we were talking about like what should be my next project. And it's got to be something that's me. It's like maybe a Porsche, something 959, something this. I don't have 959 money, so it had to be something kind of fun. And I've cannonballed across the United States 13 times now, so maybe it's something a cannonball connected thing. This has all of it in one. I'm like, we should go take a look at it. So when we got to LA after our run, we went and looked at it. We went and met Baron and with Ed Bolian, and we tried to figure out a deal. And
the whole thing was wild.
It was insane. Are you going to put pictures over this?
Yeah, I'll throw
All right, there's going to be pictures now of the inside of Baron's house. These guys like rolled in. We've driven across the country. We're exhausted.
We're tired. We have a couple hours of sleep.
Yeah, it's a couple days before Halloween. And we come up to this place, and he's like, yeah, come to our place. And it's in the hills of Los Angeles. And you walk up, and the front door is like this wooden gate that goes up. You can't see the house, and there's a glowing green light in the front. And it looked like something from Frankenfurter, like, Rocky Horror Picture Show. And we were all going to die. And when he opened the door, he's an artist, and everything in his house is handmade art. Like
everything. And it's very, enter photo, right? So it's all just weird, goofy, steam meets Art Deco meets
like 50s sci-fi metal work. He takes animal skeletons and puts metal heads on. Crazy stuff. I mean, cool, but wackadoodle, especially after we've driven straight for 30-something hours.
It's dark. It's at night.
And we look at it and
in the dark, and the way he lit it was he had a light hanging. What was the light that was inside here? It was a.
I have it. It's this old piece of sculpture. It's like an old jet thing.
That's the light that he turned on to. It's green, illuminating, so the thing's glowing, right? As we're looking at it.
It was bonkers. And he took us inside our house. He showed us all the crazy stuff in there, but we couldn't come to a deal. He still wanted big money for it, and we're like, no. And I know a lot about 911s, so I could tell the condition of it and what it needed. And I'm like, I don't want to go too deep on this, but it's really cool. So a couple months later, I called them back, and I'm like, we thought about it, and we came to a deal. I got not 35, it was eventually online for 18, I think is what it finally got down to, and we got it for a lot less than that. So it was cheap enough that I could at least bring it home, take a look at it, and see if it's viable. And that's what we've done, is we gutted it. It had nothing in the back, but it had a bar in here and a separation window and 2 front seats. And we took everything out of it to see how it was built. We figured out it was built by Ultimate Limo in LA. Talk about cocaine-driven stuff. You can put a picture up of they built the world's longest limousine, which was like 2 limos put together in the middle with a pool on it, and a jacuzzi, and like lap dancers, and they built all this insane stuff. It's made just the way they made things, which was like, all right, let's weld, and it was like, and it's horribly built.
It's bad. You can see there's some stuff up here where they couldn't bother to cut another piece of metal, so they used a nut to fill it. There's a washer in here somewhere that's filling space.
I can't even understand who would, like, this wouldn't get through high school shop class, right? So what we're going to do is tear the metal out. I've got a couple of fabricator friends. We got a whole crew of people that will be working on it. And we're going to bring it back to life and cannonball it. That's the plan. We're going to take it to your place and get it painted and do the body work on it.
We're going to body work and paint it. We're going to make this thing look awesome.
And then I'm going to get an interior made. I'm looking for a turbo motor for it now because that'll really hack people off. We'll put a Porsche turbo engine in it. And make it cool. And the idea is, if we can get it done, I can get the metal work done now, and you can get it body work done over the winter. Maybe we can get it done by next summer, and cannonball it next fall would be awesome.
If we could get a hold of Steve Aoki. We haven't really connected that yet. So Rocky Aoki has 2 kids, Steve and Devin.
Yeah.
Steve is a DJ. He throws cakes at people. He's awesome. And then Devin was in Too Fast, Too Furious, right? I think she drove the pink car in Too Fast, Too Furious.
Which was which.
And so they're in the car scene, and if we could entice one of them to participate, right?
I'd love for either of them to be involved in this. I'd love for Benny Hanna to get involved with this. It also had a Kirin Beer down the side of it. We get Kirin Beer to sponsor it. To get sponsors back into it would be a hoot, and help get it back. Because it's going to be...
House of Colors, we'll paint it.
Yeah, we're going to paint it. It'll be awesome. What's funny is I didn't know who Steve Aoki was because I'm old, right? And Ed and I are talking in the front of the Rolls Royce, and I'm like, yeah, Rocky Aoki owned it, and he's asleep. He's been asleep for like an hour, and then this face comes up and goes, Rocky Aoki? Is he related to Steve Aoki? And we're like, what? And you got all excited, and I'm like, who's Steve Aoki? And you're like, oh my God, you don't know who Steve Aoki is? And like, apparently he's a famous DJ. So I would love that. I bought both of Rocky Aoki's autobiography. Like, he had one autobiography and a biography. So I know all about him now. Now I need to know more about his son. But it's just, this is very me. This is bonkers, but it has a purpose. Like, when it's done, I'll pull into any Porsche event and drive their minds insane.
Totally.
We'll get to cannonball it, and then I'll just keep it. I think this is going to be a fun show up to a show car.
So the plan is to paint the car, fix the car, fix the tops, obviously. So this is the original Targa.
This is the original Targa from the original car.
The other one looks like it's a hybrid, half-made, maybe.
It was made out of steel. It weighs like 80 pounds.
Right.
So it was welded to the car when we found it. They had like kind of done all this in Bondo. That was what the body shop was doing, I guess. But we want the Twin Targa look. So yeah, we're going to bring it back to Twin Targa, and maybe you guys can help us.
Maybe we'll 3D print something, which would be cool if we could come up with that. So we'll see when we get it and dig into it. Yesterday we had kind of talked about the rear seat situation. So right now the seats are inset.
Yeah. So Porsches were 911s. If you had no legs and only one arm, you could sit in the back seat. So there's no putting seats back there for a human being. So what we're going to do is put the seats on the floor, and then build boxes back there with, like, champagne flutes or something that comes out, or, something that squirts cocaine in the air. I don't know. And then have like a small little retained, like, a wall between the driver and the back if we have room for it. But I think we're going to use like 928 seats, but there's no way to get somebody to sit back there. Like, he's all like, we can sit in the back. And I got you to sit in the back, and you were like, nope.
No.
Like, I'm like sitting there for 35 hours.
It's built for miniature people.
Yeah. The reason, the 911, I'm a car geek, and that's kind of part of my channel. If you want a little geekdom, the 911 originally was supposed to be mid-engined, and it was a 2-seater. And what happened was the tariffs in the early 60s, these were designed in like 63, 64, they came out right after that. The tariffs on two-seater sports cars were immense coming in the United States. That's the reason the Austin Healey grew a back seat. And even though it was like this tiny little back seat, they can call it a 4-seater. So they moved the engine back to rear engine, so they had room for back seats, and it would not be a 2-seater coupe. it'd be a 4-seater.
Got it.
And it was to get around tax and tariff laws. Otherwise, we would have had basically a Boxster now. It would have been a mid-engine car originally. But that's the reason the seats are just for show, really.
Right.
Or like maybe put a kid's seat back there, but that no one's ever sat back there.
Right.
No. Hard no. But it's certainly one of the larger projects here.
Right.
This is I have no aspirations that this is going to be like I'm going to do this over the winter and have it done. This is a whole year work for a lot of different people, a lot of different shops. So if we can get a community together to bring it back to life, it'll be kind of awesome. Want to show us more stuff?
Yeah. What else we got?
Let's do more stuff. And here we are outside. Boom! Magic. This is another one of the 928s. This is the one I wanted to keep and fix up. We're going to be putting in the 928 engine back in this with a supercharger. But this is another one of my art cars. Art cars were really cool in the 70s. BMW started it with their kind of race cars that they painted, and they've done it for years since then. And it's caught on with other brands, but BMW was known for it with big artists. So I approached Kelly Telfer, who's one of the prominent automotive artists, fine artists out there.
Check him out down below.
Check him out down below. I was like, dude, would you paint one of my cars for me? And he was like, heck yeah. And the interior of this was what's called Pasha, which is the psychedelic checkerboard, which I love. And I've been looking for this spec car. It's a Euro 5-speed, no sunroof, without any of the weird bumpers and DOT stuff they added when they brought it into the country. Pasha interior. And I'm like, let's put Pasha on the outside. So I gave it to him, and he spent about a week, apparently painting nonstop, hand painted the whole car with acrylic. And it starts off a very traditional Pasha. I wish the hood was on it because the hood looks amazing. And then goes to kind of different colors in the back. We're getting it clear coated. We just went to the painter today, and they're going to clear coat the whole thing and seal it all in, and then we'll start assembling it.
So apparently you can clear coat acrylic. That was an interesting...
That was the experiment. We brought him a chunk of a car already with it on there, and I had them test shoot it to see if it would stick or they would react with the acrylic paint. But apparently it works. So we're going to shoot the whole car, clear coat it, so it'll be a proper, clear coat paint job over it, sealed in forever. And this is one of my dream cars was a 928. And of course it can't be normal. So anybody can paint their car, Miami blue, right? But this is the only one that will ever look like this. And we also had one of my other parts cars was a company called Devic, who built hot rod parts 20 years ago, and then went out of business. They were right before 928s took off. They're starting to take off now, and they went broke. But they built 600 horsepower 928s. They did land speed records, and they climbed mountains with them. They did all kinds of things. So I found a car, one of the parts cars, that had $40,000 worth of Devic work, coilover suspension, S4 brakes on it, all kinds of cool stuff. So I took all that stuff off that car, and it's on this. So this car has received all the best parts of 3 other 928s. So underneath, it's actually this is a 78. It's actually like an 88 underneath.
Got it.
So it's going to handle. It'll be quick. We'll have a supercharger whine going on, so it'll be a lot of fun.
That'll be awesome.
This is one of my passion projects. So it'll be coming out of here into the paint shop soon enough.
Yeah, next week, right?
Next week. And right here, is the Cannonball ambulance. This is a 71 GMC ambulance. And we built this in 30 days to do the 2019 C2C Express, which is a Cannonball run. And we found it up the coast. It had no engine or transmission in it. And I found a 2005 Cadillac Escalade. It was smashed in the back. So we took the engine, transmission, and everything out of that and put it in here. So it's got a LQ9 in it, which is 340 horsepower from the factory. And I didn't turbocharge or anything. It's just straightforward. And we cannonballed this across the country with 5 guys in it on the gurney. The gurney named
Dan
Gurney. In 37 hours, coast to coast, we did it in this thing.
There's only one jump seat, so
yeah,
it's driver passenger.
So come here, you got to see what we. So we've got driver passenger, gurney, jump seat. Right. So it was supposed to be 4 of us, one in the front, one in the back, and then one person sleeping back here. And this British journalist that they were shooting this documentary was like, they flew over a Jaguar from England, and they were going to trade. So they broke up the crew. One of the guys from the crew, the cameraman from the crew, is like, they're really boring. Can we go with you guys? You guys are fun. And I'm like, there's no room in here. He looks inside and he's like, oh, and this is literally like an hour before we leave. He's like, I could sit here. I'm like, you're talking about this 1 square foot of patch. You're going to sit there for 30 something hours. And he's like, he takes his jacket off. He puts it on there. And again, he's got cameras and sound equipment. He's like, I'll just hold it all. He sat there for the entire trip. He's like, I don't want to bother you. I don't want to, because what happens is you drive, then you go to the passenger seat, then you go back and take a nap, and we rotate around.
Right.
And he's like, no, I don't need to take a nap. I'm fine. Awesome. Dave Asp, brilliant guy, shot a really cool short documentary for the BBC inside this thing.
That's awesome.
And then after we got it, I was like, I've done so many cannonballs. I built so many cannonball cars that I didn't keep any of them, and I was sad. I built a Army staff car out of a 9C1 Caprice cop car. We had an A-Team van that we built. I had a Buick Roadmaster station wagon, which we turned into the Millennium Falcon. We had another ambulance, a newer ambulance we did. And I was like, I just sold them all afterwards. So I said, I'm going to keep this one. And we turned it into the tow rig for Ficarra Classic. So now this takes us everywhere. It's a much more fun tow rig than like a Silverado, right? And So tomorrow we're going to put the 928, the Hippie 928 on the back of this, which is the same setup we took to Radwood last month, and we won at Radwood. We won an award for having the rig. We drove the whole rig in and just parked it.
This was the accessory,
together.
right?
This was the accessory. We won best accessory, and the best accessory was the ambulance itself.
That's awesome.
And it drives great. It's a wonder. It's all mechanically new underneath. We just kept the patina and looking old school on top. And the lights and the siren work.
Yes.
Which we will turn on tomorrow because I don't want to frighten my neighbors right now. But this has been a lot of fun. I like fun stuff. I can afford a brand new car or whatever I want. I don't want any of that stuff. There's nothing interesting. I like cars and trucks and vehicles that make me smile and that make other people smile. So we were driving in this, and kids wave, right? Oh, yeah. And families point, and people take pictures, and you can't drive this in a bad mood.
Oh, we were smiling the whole time. Camera girl smiled the whole way.
Whole time. And it was like I think these kind of cars bring joy to people, or at least curiosity, or it excites their mind. Like when they see the Hippie 928, they don't know what to make of that thing.
Right.
They won't know what to make of a Porsche 928. That's fun. That's like challenging, which brings us to my most fun car.
Behind door number 3.
Behind the curtain right here. You'll have to come in because I think let's just do this.
I'll hold it up.
All right.
I'll hold it. You talk.
So this is a 1970 Toyota Corona, where it was. It was built for the 24 Hours of Lemons. We raced it stock twice, once on ethanol just for fun, because why not? And then we're like, what happened was I was racing a Supra with a 1JZ in it, and they hated it. They called it cheaty, and it was. And they're like, you know what? We'll let you keep the engine, but only if you put it in a pre-1975 Toyota. And they thought it was impossible. Well, we did it. That's the kind of stuff we build in the shop. Like, oh yeah, you bet? So we built a whole new front subframe for it. We moved the engine back about a foot, so you almost sit in the back seat. So it's got a 1JZ twin turbo on it. It's got the front and rear subframes and suspension from a Mark III Supra, which is like 1988 era. It's got the front disc brakes off a Mustang Cobra R, which amazingly bolt onto the Supra. The radiator is in the back seat, rally car style. So that's actually the intercooler up front. And all the kind of trick weird stuff I always wanted. I love the Audi Trans Am car from 1988, and one of the big things of that was the exhaust goes out the door. Mm-hmm. So the exhaust goes out the side door, just like the Audi. So when we go around, we blow flames on the cars next to us, downshifting. Like, you just overload the engine a little bit.
That's awesome.
And like the intake, we just cut a hole in the hood, and there's the air cleaner just sticking right out of the hood.
What are the aero discs?
The aero disc, so wheel fans, part of my geekery was Porsche introduced or started using the wheel fan professionally in the early 70s on the 91730, which was the most powerful sports car ever built. Some people know it. Almost 1,500 horsepower it had. And one of the problems it had really wide wheels and very small wheels for the day. And they couldn't get enough air into the brakes. So they built these wheel fans. They're essentially a radial fan that bolted on the outside of the wheel that drew air. As a radial fan spins, the centrifugal force forces the air out and it pulls the air through the wheel. So I'm like, I want some of that. Who would want one of those? So I made wheel fans for the front, but that's actually a fan off of a 1968 Corvair. They're magnesium fans for a Corvair because the Corvair engine sits flat,
Right.
and that's the fan that sits on top of it. So we made adapter plates, and it works as a radial fan. We're going to build extensions for this, so we want to make them a little bit bigger. We'll build a little bit of a disc around it to make it a little bit larger. But they work. They actually work really well. They because we don't have room because of the weird subframe we built. We didn't have room for air ducts inside to blow air on the like traditionally you have air ducts in the front to blow air right on the calipers. We don't have the room for that. So we'll suck the air out, old school, right? So we have those on the front, made those, I love fabricating and designing stuff, and just whenever mechanic Matt, who works with me, who's fantastic, he rolls his eyes all the time because I'm like, let's try this. And he's like, well, how are we going to build it? Because he's very much a mechanic. And he's like, well, how are we going to do it? I'm like, I don't know. Let's figure it out, right? Let's get a piece of paper and some material and start hacking things up and making it. Judge Phil, who was the lead judge at Lemons, he had one of this. The reason we chose the Corona was that was his first car. And he was the one who told us that we was going to penalize the Supra to death.
Right.
So when we showed up to the first race with his first car, we had the number 1 on the side, and it said Phil's first car down the side.
Oh, cool.
So he, I don't know, a couple of years, we finished it. He's all like, that needs fender mirrors, right? I'm like, hell yeah. So we got the Japanese fender mirrors for it. And little by little, it changes. The next thing it happens, like it's been in mothballs for about 2 years. So we'll be getting it out actually this winter and getting it ready for next spring. But on top of the car, probably hard to see, is a wing. That's actually a wing off a 1971 McLaren Can-Am car. And it's probably worth more than half the cars here. But we're going to build a rig on the roof. So in the center of the car, we're going to put the wing on the center of gravity, pushing the car down like they did when they first put wings on cars. The first wing car was a Porsche race car this guy built in Germany, had the wing centered over the car. Because if you put the wing on the back, you have to have a lot of downforce in the front to equal it. And you spend all the time balancing the car at. So I'm just going to put it in the middle and just smash it down from the center. And we'll put it on jack so we can move forward and back, so we can adjust the center of gravity. And it's going to be on rams, so when you hit the brakes, it'll come up as an air brake.
I hope it's mechanical. So when you push the brake down, it's just a lever that flips it up.
We're actually going to use air, because the problem is that actuators, like an electric actuator, doesn't move fast enough.
Right.
But a air actuator moves like that. So we'll have a small compressor running off the drive shaft that'll create enough pressure in the system that when you push it, it'll just go psh.
That'd be awesome.
So the idea is to have 3 positions. One is in kind of the downforce position, one is in the air brake position, and one is DRS flat, no drag. So when you have the pedal mashed on the floor, it'll go flat because it's in the straightaway. When you only partial throttle, it'll go into its regular position, downforce mode, so you can go around corners and do things like that. And when you hit the brake pedal, it'll snap up.
Right.
So I already got all that planned out. So we'll be building the wing over the winter. That's the next big kooky project. And the great thing about Lemons is they allow this insanity. As long as it's safe and it meets the regulations, they don't care what you do. So yeah, that wing will be in a race car for the first time in, 50-something years.
The 70s?
Yeah, since the 1970s. So in 50 years, that wing will finally be back in a race car. And yeah, and that's it. And then my friend Travis Bell owns Celebrity Machines, and he makes license plates for like movie cars. So every movie you've ever seen, every TV you've ever seen, he has a license plate for those cars, for Knight Rider, the A-Team, all those things. So he sent me, very nice, all his spare like scratch plates, and I made the fender extensions out of the plates and the front air dam out of the plates. Some of them are real plates. I've got a bunch from Guam, and like some of them we found. Some are real, some are fake. But yeah, like I ate a Ferrari. I think that's from. Is that from? Wow, I forget what TV show it's from. Dang it! Is it from Beverly Hills 90210? I think that's the license plate from Caddyshack. That was Rodney Dangerfield's. Over there is Evel Knievel's. Over there is Southpaw from Rocky.
Rocky, yep.
And they're all starting. That's Stark. That's Tony Stark.
Yep.
This is Stark here as well.
That's awesome.
Anyway, I have a lot of fun. So that's that car. And what else? I know we got some cars in the other garage, but
Why don't you show them the six-wheeler?
oh, let's show the six-wheeler. I also have the Cannonball Audi, which we could do.
Oh, yeah.
Or
We'll do that one, too. Yeah,
all
yeah.
right, okay.
All right.
So, do we want to walk over there? Or we want to jump in the air and disappear.
Well, we should disappear for
All
sure.
right, ready? Let's go to the six-wheeler. Right? This is the famous six-wheel Range Rover that it's on my channel. It's on VinWiki. It's on Car Trek. So Ed Bolian had it built helped him build this into a Overlander for the season 10 of Car Trek, which you can find on Tavarish's channel.
It'll be linked down below.
A link down below. And the idea of it was they were going to build off-roaders. So we got this an original six-wheel Range Rover, which they built not many of, from France. I saw one. This is funny. Somebody sent me a link because people send me links to weird stuff. And they're like, it's a six-wheeled Range Rover. I'm like, oh, no, that's awesome. I love six-wheel vehicles. I had six-wheel RVs. Anything with six wheels intrigues me. The funny was is the auction had published and did all its publicity on April 1st.
Oh, gotcha.
And so when it got to the United States, I don't think they recognize April Fool's Day like we do.
Right.
Everybody thought it was an April Fool's joke. Nobody bid on it. It had no bids because everybody thought it was a gag.
Right.
To get attention for the auction. But it was real. So I tracked it. I called the auction afterwards. I'm like, did you sell it? No. How much? And we figured out a price. Got it to the United States. Then it was a road car at that point. This guy was an art dealer in Paris, and he would use it to take paintings and furniture around Paris. So in the back of it, some pretty cool stuff probably got moved around. But it was a street vehicle. So we turned it into an Overlander. Like I said before, from the 928 leftover rack, the giant rack we built on the roof, we had to widen the rack a foot, and it's the full length of the top of it. So it is, I don't know, the rack's got to be 12 feet long. It's massive. So we built the rack. The idea was to kind of give it the Camel Trophy feel from the Land Rovers from the 90s.
Right.
They used to race the Discoveries, and before that, I think the Defenders, or at least the series vehicles, they raced back in the day, and they'd race through the jungles. It was the coolest thing ever. So I got the same lights, the same setup as they did. We tried to make it look like that. So we made Car Trek trophy signs for it. But we built it in about the same time as we built the ambulance, about 30 days. Mechanic Matt and I put it together. Did the rack, got it lifted, bought new suspension for it, built this front bumper for it, got all the trappings of overlanding. So I came from a background of making film cars. We used to, in New York, I owned a film car company, and we made vehicles for movies and photo shoots. So the order you do things for film, and this was going to be on film, was you make it look right first and work right second, because you can always fake a car. You know, we've pushed cars in movies, and you would think it was working because it broke down and nobody cared,
Right.
but it looked good, right?
Right.
So we made it look great. We didn't make it run great, and Ed drives it in Car Trek and hates it, and for good reason. It was filling up with dust, and it had no power, and he got stuck 15 times. And he was just like, it was miserable in this thing for good reason. So he kept it for a while, and I just recently bought it from him. So it is now mine. And with the challenge that I can make Ed Bolian love the Rover. And what we're going to do to this, the next project is we're going to LS swap it, the same LS as we put in the ambulance. We're going to LS swap it. Nothing super fancy. It doesn't need a million horsepower, right?
LQ4 or something like
Yeah,
that again.
I think LQ9. I really like the LQ9 a lot. It's a great motor. LQ4 has a little less power, but they're cheaper.
Iron block, right?
Yeah.
Iron block, aluminum
But I
heads.
like the LQ9. So if we can find LQ9, I'd be totally down with that. If not, an LS2 would be good, or LS3 out of like a Camaro or something like that.
Sure.
But we'll see what we find. But we'll change the engine. We'll have some power, and then this is only four-wheel drive. The rear axle on all of these was a tag axle that just hung there to support weight, because when they built these originally, most of them were fire engines for small airports, and they had big water tanks in the back.
Gotcha.
So it was just there to hold weight. But we're going to get a kit or fabricate something ourselves, like a transmission to go up and over the front axle.
Does
and
the
down
differential? The differential has a.
The rear differential has a input for it, so it's just spinning out there, right? So what we gonna do is get a drive shaft to it. So we're gonna figure that engineering out first. I think what we're gonna do is LS swap it first, see how it does, then make the 6-wheel drive and see how it does, and keep testing it. I just did a video on my channel where we ran this against the ambulance as a test to see how it would go, and the ambulance kicked its ass, like just hands down. This has got a 3.9 liter Rover V8 in it. When it was new, had 200 horsepower, and I'm pretty sure it's got none of that left. But it's just been a wonderful project. It's such a cool rig. One of my favorite vehicles. Yeah.
Awesome. Sweet.
More?
Yeah, let's go into the garage.
Holy heck! Let's go to the other garage. Let's jump over there.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
To the garage. Now we're inside. Now there's lots of lights.
Man.
Suddenly
The magic of a car classic.
Yes. Welcome to the magical kingdom of Ficarra. We're in the garage in my house now, and I've got two cars here. This is the famous Bahama Mama, which is a 1968 911 that lived in the Brumos collection in Florida for almost 30 years. And that collection is one of the best Porsche collections in the country. They don't sell anything, but Kelly Telfer, my friend who painted the Pasha car, somehow through magic or coercion or whatever, convinced them to sell him the Bahama Mama. And she's an amazingly preserved car, but it wasn't totally correct. There were a few things that previous owners had changed that we needed to make so it was perfect for a car show, to take to a real Porsche show, because it was so close. So,
What kind of things don't make a car correct?
well, we checked. Porsches have what's called a Cardex, and it's kind of the birth certificate of a Porsche. And on it, it tells you the options that it was given. If those options are missing, we go and find them and put them back on. For instance, this car was optioned with the Porsche sports seats, which was a very rare option, especially with headrests back in the day. Those seats go for about $25,000 now, and they were missing. Regular seats were inside. There were a few things that were, when a person took care of it, they might have oh, I don't want these seats, or those weren't comfortable, they didn't fit in them, and they found a regular seat. But weird things like the hood badge on a 68, for instance, later hood badges, the stripes were red. On this car, they should be orange. So we found a correct period Porsche logo with the orange stripes on it. That's correct for this period. We went through this car front to rear to make sure everything was as it was in 1968. The wheels, for instance, weren't the correct wheels. These years were 1 year only. 1968, they made Fuchs in 5.5 inches wide. Next year it went to 6 inches. We found this car was built in May of 1968. We found a full set 5 wheels that were made in March of 1968, which is correct. They would have been on the shelf ready to go. And we had them restored by the best restorer for wheels, Harvey Weinman. And then we had Audubon Interiors redo the seats, because they're the best. I only use the best vendors when I don't do the work myself. I use the same vendors as people like Canepa and Pebble Beach type level people do. And they do perfect work from the beginning. So we had the seats corrected, the wheels corrected, we got the right tires on it. We went through underneath the hood, and things had been touched up over the years. We made sure all the paint was correct. We went through the entire car. There's bolts on the heads of the bolts. There's like Chemex. There's a few different brands of bolts they use. This is how geeky we get. over the years, people go to Home Depot, right, and they get bolts, and they've got like JT on it or something like that. And they're not the right bolts. I've got a box of period bolts that we send off to get replated every once in a while. And when a car like this comes in, we go through and look for all the Home Depot bolts, take them out, and we put on the correct period German bolts back on it from front to rear. We did that in the rear. We also the transmission originally on the Cardex was a 5-speed, and it was a 4-speed that was in here, and it was the wrong number. It was the wrong transmission. And we don't. Here's usually this happened a lot, and people. This is more geekery, Porsche geekery for you. What would happen on the lots? The cars came in 4 or 5 speeds back in the early '60s, and 5 speeds were kind of like the S or the higher level cars. Lower level cars would have the 4-speed. This car had been optioned with the 5-speed, and sometimes on the lot they would change the transmissions. They would swap a 5 for a 4-speed. So I've seen a lot of 911s that came off the lot with the wrong transmission because they swapped them out. I'm not sure that's exactly what happened, but it's not unusual for a 4 and 5-speed to get swapped. So what we did is we took it to Jerry Woods, legendary like Le Mans Porsche mechanic that lives not too far from here, and he turned the 4-speed into a 5-speed because they used the same box.
Well, wouldn't they have wanted the 5-speed though? Wouldn't that be more sought after?
It would have been more sought after. So we're not sure. Like I've taken the history. So I'm a car historian by trade. That's where I make most of my money. And I researched it all the way back to its original owner. Unfortunately, the original owner has passed away, so I don't know what happened that first 20 years.
Got it.
The other owners I've spoke to, the owners afterwards I've interviewed, and they said it always had the 4-speed in it. So I don't know what happened to the original transmission, but according to the Cardex, it was a 5-speed car. So we built a 5-speed transmission with the correct gears. They have letters for them as far as what the ratios are. So we put the 1968 ratios in it. It is not the same number case, but everything inside is exactly the way it would have been 1968.
Sure.
It's as close as we can get.
Right. So just out of curiosity, if say the badge is wrong or say the wheels are wrong, how much does that actually affect price in this world?
If you're trying to get the car as a perfect car or as close to a perfect car, it can change the value 30%, 40%. So if we spent, I was trying to think what we got on after we got the chairs were like $9,000 and the $6,000 to reupholster. So we're $15,000 into the chairs. Those add at least $30,000 to the value of the car. So there's certain things that will add value, or at least the value of it. Or if it doesn't add value, sometimes we change things on cars, not to just add value, but to make it sell faster. Like there's no part of your brain or the buyer is going to have subconsciously going, well, that's not right. We try to make every subconscious idea disappear from the beginning. So they look at it and they don't have any subconscious doubts. Right? They just go, yeah, this looks right. This is right. This is right.
The reason I bring that up is in the hot rod world, right?
Yeah.
Now we are seeing that numbers matching is less and less valuable because they want power brakes, or they want disc brakes all the way around, right?
But numbers matching for rare cars still terribly important.
Totally. So I guess this is rare enough that
these cars a few years ago were $200,000. They've softened a bit since then, but yes, if you're going to be dropping $200,000, they want to make sure they're not going to take the time to correct it. They want it to be corrected at that point. So we worked on this car for almost a year. Going front to back and then back to front, making it just right. Like even the padding underneath the carpet was incorrect. So we got the correct padding underneath. Like every little thing we went through as best we could. Sometimes without a complete restoration, you can't get there. This wasn't a restoration, this was a correction.
Right.
But it is a wonderful car. It's going up for sale quite soon on Bring a Trailer. So we're really hopeful that it brings all the money to Kelly and his enjoyment. But he's had a blast for the last 5 years. And enjoyed the car for what it is, and hopefully somebody will pass it on to someone else who enjoys it as much as he does.
Totally. So this will be at Monterey.
This will be at Monterey. This will be at Monterey Works outside of his booth. So we're taking this down tomorrow, as well as the Hippie 928. So this will be on the road tomorrow. It's so much fun to drive. These 2-liter short wheelbases, such a hoot. I love them. And then finally, get to
Last but not
last
least,
but not least, my daily driver essentially is this 1985 Audi Quattro. What makes this special? Of course, I can't have just a normal one, right?
right?
Back in 1985, they built 12 One Lap of America. Now that we've explained what One Lap of America is, One Lap America Brumos editions of the Quattro 4000S, and only two are known to still exist. Ed Bolian owned one, and I own the other. They were numbered 1 through 12. Ed had number 1. This is number 11. But we don't. We think they all got crushed eventually or destroyed because they didn't appear to be valuable. But they have Brock Yates' signature on the back. They're numbered. What made them special was they were ordered with special gray leather interiors. Then they got special matching Recaro seats for them. Nardi steering wheel, the Gotti wheels, which are one of my favorite things. They're very 80s wheels. A set of these things are rare as hen's teeth now. Like the wheels are worth $5 or $6
Oh wow!
alone. They didn't modify the engine or anything, but you've got the front fog lights. The idea was to kind of make it resemble. They built a Quattro 4000S for the One Lap of America in 1985, and this was like the homage car to those. So they sold 6 at one dealership and 6 at the other. So there's only 2 in existence. So that would be the car that I have, and I love driving it. It has probably really like 100, little over 100 horsepower, but you drive the car flat out, and the mechanical Quattro in it back then is the best. Like you can go around, I mean, literally, you just take the corner, you just turn the wheel, every 80s car rolls over a little bit, right? Once it rolls over, the grip is tenacious, and you just put your foot on the floor and it just rips around the corner. So I went on tour with this on a almost 1,000-mile tour a few years ago, and it was fantastic because there were Ferrari 812, a 600 horsepower car, schooled him going through the mountains. And I mean, never lifted my foot once. And he's like, nah, nah. I mean, there were cars literally with 6 times my horsepower, right? Kicking ass. I love it. It's so much fun to drive. I'd rather drive a slow car fast than say a fast car slow. Like driving a Lamborghini like that, having to withhold myself would drive me insane. But this, and I got a catback exhaust from Europe, a stainless steel catback exhaust. So it makes a little bit of a rumble now, but it's not doing anything. I barely can, break the speed limit in time to scare anybody. And what we did is it was built as honor to the One Lap Cannonball. The widow, so I bought it from the widow. The original owner had passed away. She was wonderful. She interviewed me. So she called Ed, saw his video on his, and was like, can you buy, recommend somebody, or would you buy this? And he's like, I know the person. And he called me up. She called me up, and I go, well, my name's John Farcar. And she goes, I know who you are. I looked you up. I'm like, oh, all right. And I'm like, I've done lots of cannonballs. I would be honored to have your husband's car. I will promise you that I will cannonball it in his honor. So
had he ever cannonballed?
He had never cannonballed it, and that was kind of his dream. So I've organized a bunch of cannonballs called the 2904, and I ran 8 of those over a decade. And the conceit of that was that it was 2,904 miles coast to coast, and you could only spend $2,904 on the car, tolls, tickets, gas, everything.
Right.
So we raced all these crazy cars. And then I was like, well, I don't want to do that again. I put that to bed. What should we do? My friend Pierce Plam helped me come up with an idea. And the idea was this couldn't possibly have 100 horsepower with the wheels. It's 4-wheel drive. When it was new, I think it had 127 horsepower. So let's do a cannonball for cars with less than 101 horsepower. 100 horsepower is the maximum.
Right.
And 27 cars, and we called it the musket ball because it's slower, smaller, and less accurate than a cannonball, right? So that was the whole idea. So all these sub 100 horsepower cars lined up, and it was fantastic. We'll put a picture here, show you some of the cars. There were all kinds of things, but Ed came, all the cannonballers showed up for it, and we cannonballed this coast to coast, and we did it in 35 hours, which is insanely respectful for a car with 100 horsepower.
Yeah.
The biggest mod I didn't want to change that much. We just kind of ran it stock. The only mod I made was I changed fifth gear. Fifth gear on older European cars, for some reason, is really like revs the heck out of them. Mercedes was like that. Audi was like that. So I found a fifth gear. All the geeky research on the interwebs, thank God for the interwebs. I found that the fifth gear from an Audi 5000 diesel was much higher because they were torquey cars than anything else Audi built. So we built a whole transmission for the fifth gear, found it, slid it in, and instead of 80 miles an hour at 4,000 RPM, was 80 miles an hour at 3,000 RPM. And it was so much easier to drive.
Well, with 100 horsepower, probably.
It made a difference. It made a difference because the power is around 3,000. So we can maintain 80. Allegedly, we had it up to 114 miles an hour in Mexico.
That's right.
Allegedly. But that was almost as fast as not that it would go, but I was comfortable driving a car with this many miles, this old, that fast.
Right.
It didn't really have much more in it. But we had a blast. We came in. We took like 5th place out of 27 cars. But the purpose was to cannonball. It was to honor his memory, and we did. And this was a car I won't sell. There's a few cars I'm going to keep this. I'm going to keep the ambulance. I'll probably let some of the other cars go at some point. But this one means a lot. And it's one of 2 left in existence.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it only means something to like maybe 200 people on the planet would care about this car or its history. I don't care. I love it.
Where's the other one, did you say?
So the other one Ed Bolian had, they raced it in one lap of America.
Oh, wow.
I think they lost 3rd gear. Like they raced it with like 2 gears. It was dreadful. The fuel tank locked up and all kinds of stuff. It was a mess. Ed doesn't have the best luck, I guess, but it makes good content, right? He drove the heck out of it, like at Road America and different places like that. And when they were done, he sold it to a gentleman, and I forget his name. So it's in private hands now. And this one will remain with me. Cody, my son, has showed interest in like this being his first car for high school. I'm like, maybe not, but you will inherit it someday, kid.
Right. There are plenty of other Audis
plenty of other Audis we can smash up and crash up before you get to this. But this is, I literally drive it daily. I just love it to death. I love this car.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And that's it for now.
Cool. Well, thank you for the tour.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you tomorrow on the road.
On the road. Thanks for coming and visiting my house. And please go to Fakara Classic on YouTube or Instagram.
Link below.
Link below.
Thanks.
Things below, right? But thanks for coming and visiting.
Yeah,
it's always great to have you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, my friend.
Thank you.
Yay! And we'll smash the microphones together.
All right, guys, so we made it to Monterey. We're at the venue and currently setting up right now for Saturday.
What you doing, dear?
Just working on a Lamborghini engine. No big deal. Somehow I got put in charge of this thing.
Typical Saturday.
Typical Saturday. Just working on V12s. No big deal. Yep. That's good.
Good catch, Taylor.
Okay.
Are we good on the
Stacy?
we good on the alignment here? Stacy would be proud. That's a
If
compliment.
anything, we need to like this.
Okay.
Okay.
Here we
Go
go.
right in. Yep.
Good?
Yep.
Yep. One
Okay.
more time, Trevin. Okay.
How's this box? This one.
Pretty good, yeah. This one's pretty good.
Okay. Now,
Thank you so
No,
much.
thank you for this opportunity.
And I'll tell you, the one thing that Lamborghini really did good is the fact that there's an engine screaming behind us with 610 horsepower, and you can barely even hear it in the cab with earplugs in. We've driven almost a little over 2,000 miles to Monterey from Montana and back in an 18 Lamborghini Performante. And I'm curious if there's anyone who has a Huracan who watches my channel, if you've went as far, or if anyone else has a sports car, and what the longest you've ever went is, and how do you pack, what that looks like. We've used packing cubes both in the front and kind of behind the seats here to pack. It's totally doable. Our backs hurt a little bit because these seats aren't the most comfortable, but there's definitely nothing like road tripping a sports car like this, a supercar. So yeah, hit me up. I want to see how many people, what's the most miles you've done in a day,